Welcome back to the 2-Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. Before we get into today's episode with multi-time guest now, friend of the program, Julian, we'll talk a little bit about the playoffs, Sixers, Celtics, James Harden, Joel Embiid, Miami Heat. The Western Conference got a lot of really fun question marks there leading into almost done with the second round series. Before we get into today's episode is always sponsored by SeatGeek. SeatGeek's the presenting sponsor of the 2-Pointers Podcast. You get $20 off your first purchase. Link in the top of the description takes you directly into the SeatGeek app where you get a deal score rating 1 through 10, whether it's a good score of seat availability, pricing, things like that. They're also the only app that you can see your seat in most stadiums throughout the U.S. right now. So if you're trying to go to really cheap baseball games, NBA playoffs, concerts throughout the summer, really, really great way. You can save $20 off your first purchase. Link in the top of the description. That's code 2-Pointers. All right. Thanks for letting me do the hashtag ad read. I normally do these pre-recorded, so you don't have to hear that. But you, friend of the program, this was kind of something we wanted to make sure we got out here midweek. So first of all, welcome back. Good to see you. How are you?
It's been a long time. You have sponsors now.
Yeah, I know. They were kind of like they were hashtag. They were not really hashtag ads, but they were, shout out to W Energy. But yeah, SeatGeek's awesome. We love SeatGeek. It doesn't make a $200 Celtics Sixers ticket any easier to buy, but it $20 is great. Someone the other day used one for I think it was a concert. It was like a $30 concert, and they got it for $10, and I was really happy to hear it for them. So. Yeah, baseball, I think it makes the ticket free most baseball games right now. Like on a midweek game, you're like, I'll just go catch a 9 game.
Get your money back on an A's game.
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah, unfortunately you can. A lot of baseball games right now, there's a lot of good ones, on the East Coast where it's like that $20 off. Again, hashtag all this is hashtag ad, I guess.
I'm just supporting your sponsor.
Free baseball, literally free baseball. What a date night. Take a girl on a first date. Take her to a baseball game. Don't tell her it was free. Code 2-Pointers. Anyway. Yeah, no, it's a great. I thought of it the other day, and I'm like, how can I position that on a basketball podcast? All right, enough rambling. This is going to be a lot of fun. You and I talked on the phone this morning for context for those who are listening, but we need to talk about the Celtics-Sixers series because as an avid Sixers fan and as an avid basketball appreciator and knowing what you're talking about, I want to talk about it because it's the series I've unfortunately, because of just life and scheduling, have been able to watch the least live. I have since watched most of the games and times, so it's just been fun getting back and making sure I don't miss anything. So this is a conversation that will help guide me a little bit as well. Obviously, Miami is up 3-1 in their series against New York. I'm going to call it all but over. I hate to put New York in a corner and say they're old yellered, but it's probably over. I believe, where are they going back for game? It would be game 5 in New York. So anything can happen, sure, but like they've got to win 2. I don't know. I'm just 3 of the next 4, whatever it is. So either way, Miami's got a very fair shot here to win 3-1. So ultimately, with the Sixers-Celtics series, I'll lead with a question just to get kind of the juices flowing again for us, and then we'll talk about your Harden stuff with Embiid, just kind of talking through that series as a whole as a fan. Who would Miami rather play?
I think, in all honesty, it depends. From a pride perspective, I think they want another shot at Boston. Right?
I like that. I like that a lot.
I think they believe they can beat Boston. I believe they can beat Boston. I believe they can beat either team. But if you're looking at matchups, I don't think – no, actually, I think they'd just rather play Boston.
Really? Like all things aside, they would rather play Boston from a basketball standpoint.
This sounds nuts, but I don't think Jimmy's the best or potentially even best two-way. He's the second best two-way player in a Sixers Heat series. But I think offensively, he's the third best player in that series. And I think that the star power of Embiid and Harden is when they're hot is, as we've seen in the 2 games that Philly has won, right? The star power of Embiid and Harden, in my opinion, is a bit more potent than Jaylen Brown and a porous Jayson Tatum.
Yeah, I think if you're Jimmy Butler, trying to separate a little bit, I don't think he cares who they're playing because I think I'm with you in that regard. I think he thinks he can beat anyone in any series, period, on either side, and I think that's going to be almost to their demise eventually when they do run into, I think, the better of the 2 teams in either Philly or Boston. I think they lose to either one of them, but that's neither here nor there. We haven't talked about. We don't know who they're playing yet, which is why we're here talking. I know Heat fans and Knicks fans are going to want to hear us talk about it more, but I'm with you. I think I would rather see them play. Like, I don't know. It's like what would I rather want, right? Like as a fan, I think I'd rather want the Boston rematch, but at the same time, I agree with you. I think Philly's just the more buzzsaw team right now in terms of a talent standpoint for Miami. I think Miami and Boston kind of have. There are some things that can negate each other, and I think either way, the coaching matchup would be in Eric Spoelstra's favor, which is why I didn't want to spend forever, because I think he'll kind of be able to chess match it. And I almost think it's unfair for Philly Boston to have Spoelstra. If they win it in 5, he's got an extra 3 to 6 days, depending on how long the series goes, if I got the math right, 4 to 6 days on potentially preparing for either one of these teams, which is bad for either thing. They need to get this done like in 6. Like if the team wants to beat Miami, either Sixers or Celtics, they've got to get this series done in 6, because Miami's going to have more rest with a really old roster, and they're going to have more time to prepare for either side. So that is all I have on Miami. I do think it's important detail to mention as people hear this. We'll know the result of Game 5 tonight in the West. We'll talk about in a minute, but also your Sixers-Celtics series. So talk me through a little bit about this phone call this morning. We had a little bit of just, we caught up 49 minutes of it, and we were talking about all kinds of different things. But, the James Harden conversation really struck me a little bit. I really enjoyed it. So talk to me through like where you are with just how he's impacted this series and just some of the things you've seen.
Look, I don't want to say it's all down to one player. I generally hate that vibe. But if we're looking at the games that my Sixers have won versus the games that my Sixers have lost, Tatum and Brown are going to do what Tatum and Brown are going to do, right? They're going to be hot for a quarter, cold for a quarter. They're going to have quarters where they look like they're the 2 best players on earth, not at the same time. It kind of alternates. It's never both of them hot at the same time. And they're going to have players where you're wondering if they're even on the court, right? The way that this series has been dictated so far is whether or not James Harden is able to essentially get to 40 points. I don't think he has to score 40 all series for Philly to win. I think the magic number for James Harden is 25. But in all honesty, when Embiid's going to get his no matter what, right? We've seen that in both games he's played. I don't think he's really hampered by the injury as much as people like to rip on him for it. Especially sure, he's not taking threes. I'm glad he's not taking threes. But when Harden's aggressive, the Philly offense is a completely different animal that I don't really think Boston has an answer for. And it's kind of what we envisioned when you saw Embiid and Harden on paper. You envision 2 guys that are so good one-on-one that you can't afford to double either of them, with shooters on the outside, and a pick-and-roll game that is one of the best pick-and-roll games in the NBA, probably historically even. It's up there with, not to, look, I'm not going to Sixers bias the whole time, but I genuinely think their pick and roll is up there with the Stockton Malone level of pick and roll. And I think that Harden's getting bashed a bit too much, just in the fact that Tatum's come up pretty small too, right? I know the national media loves Jayson Tatum. I know Boston fans debate whether he's better than Jaylen Brown or not literally every season. I have the same internal debate because I genuinely, for those who haven't heard me talk before, believe that when it comes to crunch time, Jaylen Brown is the better player, right? And it's kind of, I think that Tatum is not going to do much better than he's doing right now. I think him and Brown are they're doing what they're going to do. It really is up to James Harden to be the difference maker in the series, and I think that's where it lives or dies.
Yeah, to kind of couple things there. Jaylen Brown, like some of the late game stuff this year, and especially what we saw last year against Miami and then against Golden State in the finals, some of the ball handling stuff, I've made that very clear. I think that's being exposed, and he has, regardless of the ball handling, like people can think I tear him apart too much for ball handling, but if you're going to be that kind of lead guard for me, and he obviously plays forward this year, that's what he was voted for All-NBA for. He actually finds out tomorrow after this Game 5 if he makes All-NBA or not, which would now make him max eligible for the Celtics. So basically, long story short, if he finds out tomorrow he's max eligible, he's probably a Celtic. If he's not, he's probably not a Celtic after this year. So going to be a lot of interesting things up in the balance in the next 48 hours for Boston and for Jaylen Brown. But I can't sit here and wonder, and I want to talk about Tatum in the West, and you'll laugh at me later when we talk about it, but I do want to have an open dialogue about it. I'll save my Jayson Tatum thoughts for then. I do think it's really important, though, on the other end. You said the historical stuff with the pick and roll, and honestly, synergy only goes back to 2003. But I mean, I can sit here on one hand and give you pick and roll all-time duos that I would at least want in my top 5 or Mount Rushmore. I'm trying to kill between you and me. I haven't told you about this yet, but I've been doing this publicly lately. I'm trying to kill the Mount Rushmore thing. I'm trying to do what I call the seat at the table, which is like, I feel like Mount Rushmore just gets overused when there's clearly, I think the table can either be 4 people, right? You can have a family of 4 at a table. You can have 4 of the best guys in a league instead of a Mount Rushmore. But the table can also get bigger, right? You can pull more chairs up to the table, right? There might be 6 duos that need to have this conversation. The point I'm making is you're 100% correct in the pick and roll stuff, that it has to be happening at the rate it's happening. And obviously, yes, some of the numbers, at least back 2003, say that it is historic. It is some of the best pick and roll I think we've ever seen since Synergy was, since a camera started working for them. So at the end of the day, that is what's going to be such a big difference. And I do think that, the 40-point game thing, like some of these games have just been so close that like the things that he's doing, and I'm trying to land the plane a little bit, the things that James Harden does from a playmaker standpoint, like averaging 7.5 assists, I don't think even tells the full story of this series, regardless of pick and roll with Joel Embiid. I think it's putting Maxey in a position where he's available and able to push and transition better and be a better, tertiary playmaker. The only thing I will say that scares me a little bit is, as close as this series has been and is so far, Boston's outscoring Philly by 10 on average. They're out-rebounding them and almost out-assisting them by 10. So at least if I just looked at it and I went, that seems like a lot, and when you look at the chart that goes with it, it seems very drastic, especially from an assist standpoint. I think what's going to have to be the difference maker, if this is where I'm landing the plane, I promise, is that James Harden's playmaking is going to have to stay at the level it's at, and then just guys around him, it's just going to have to be, whether it's a pick and roll, whether it's just they keep passing through that action, they've just got to keep moving the ball. They've got to keep being productive, because to average only 17.5 assists as a team, you're not going to beat Boston that way. You're not going to win the full series, in my opinion, that way, which is why I think this is an important conversation to have. Harden's been unbelievable. I've tried my best not to bash him, other than in situations where it made sense to, like forcing your way out of 2 teams in 3 years. Maybe putting on a fat suit to leave Houston. I don't know. I can't neither confirm nor deny any of these things, but I hope that all made sense. But I'm with you. I think it's a really, really good thing to think about, because honestly, I want to sit here and stare at these stats and be like, they're not going to win this series. But then every single time, I always take it back to the eye test thing. I'm like, I've watched this series, and they can absolutely win the series in 6. So.
I do want to say one more thing if you're planning on moving on.
Joe, got more time. We skipped Miami, New York for the most part, so you've got time. We're good.
I think I would be like a poor guest to bring in if I didn't at least mention the fact that Joe Mazzulla is making Doc Rivers look good in the series.
Took the words out of my mouth.
I mean, dude, like the end of game decision making there, where one, not taking the time out at the end of regulation, don't get that one. 2, having Jaylen Brown come down to double Joel Embiid and leave James Harden open, questionable decision. And then obviously at the end, not putting the ball in either Tatum or Brown's hands to go get a bucket, waiting until the last second, and then Marcus Smart doesn't get anywhere close to getting the shot off. Like, Mazzulla's getting circles running around him this series, and I think that when Boston's shooting has been hot, sure, they've outscored, they've looked better than Philly, but they're kind of like the Mavs in that regard, where when the shots aren't falling, Boston goes from this finals juggernaut that everyone thinks is the most unbeatable team in the world to like pretty much average, And look, they had to come back in game 3 in game 4 because they out-hustled Philly a lot of the times later in that game. But the shots weren't falling, and Philly was able to, build almost a 20-point lead because they were taking better shots. And I think that, like, I've said this in the past so many freaking times that I'm always concerned of teams who live and die by the 3, and Boston is another one of those teams. They're going to live and die by the 3. And I think my Sixers are talented enough that they can't shoot an percentage and beat them. They can't. They have to shoot the lights out pretty much the rest of the way out, or they're going to lose this series.
Yeah, no, all completely fair points. And the thing that Boston's also living and dying by is, and I think and here's why I'll bring this up, is the Joe Mazzulla point is, I think he does get drugged through the media a little too much. I think he's a 34-year-old. He would be, by the way, I addressed this on a podcast recently. He would be the youngest head coach in NBA history by a decade to win a championship if he wins this year. So give the guy some credit for, not you specifically, people. Give the guy some credit for not letting this fall apart. Granted, they are a talented roster, handing it over from a guy that was a big culture, impactful defensive guy, whatever. But he's got to figure out this Marcus Smart thing, and that kind of goes back into living by one thing, dying by another. In this case, it would be the three, right? They've got to figure out how they can live and not die by Marcus Smart, and I can't beat that point up over and over again every year. But, like, Derek White was an all defensive, as of this morning, was an all defensive all defensive player, right? And they are figuring out how to play him and Smart. Like, they just need to be like, look, in crunch time, if it doesn't make sense for you to be out there, and I'm talking offensively, he doesn't need to be out there. They need to figure that out, and that's what's been, I think, where Maxey has to take advantage, because I think that is a matchup I like for Maxey. Is if he's playing against Derek White, I think he can still get to places and do things that are impactful. Like I said, especially in transition. I'm not saying Marcus Smart's a worse defender than Derek White. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I think that Maxey can capitalize on them trying to figure out this guard rotation that just is working. But, like, I mean, just out loud for a second, minutes here. I know it's the best of the best in the playoffs for Boston, but 38 from Tatum, 37 minutes for Jalen, 30 from Malcolm Brogdon, a guy who Maxey can definitely, beat on the dribble and off the dribble. 34 for Marcus Smart, 30 from Derek White, 30 from Al Horford, and then it significantly drops off to the next guard would be Peyton Pritchard with 12 minutes. So, and then Grant Williams, they play that 17-minute Joel Embiid rotation that doesn't make any sense. I have to give you credit for something, though, to completely pivot really fast. I don't remember if I said this publicly or if I said this just in a conversation and never gave you credit for it, but this is me giving you credit for it publicly. We were talking a few weeks ago off podcast, and you said something to the effect of, and you're not the only Philly fan I know. You're not the only person in Philly that I know and trust. So you were the first one to bring this up to me, where you don't ever want to say that losing a playoff series is a good thing, but I want to quote you almost verbatim. You were like, we make the finals or win the finals, we extend Doc Rivers for a minimum of 3 years, because that's just the average. Guys don't get extended for 5 to 7 years anymore. It's a 3-year. You figure out what you got and keep going, right? Use Toronto for the example. They literally fired Dwayne Casey the year he won Coach of the Year, for Christ's sake. So it can happen, right? Like, anything can happen. But you win the finals or make the finals, you extend Doc 3 years. You lose in the Eastern Conference Finals and you lose in the East semis and you fire Doc, and that's honestly the same of a win as making the finals right now. So I have to give you credit. You are 100% right, which is why I love the Joe Mazzulla point. I wanted to pivot off of it. It's kind of an awesome consolation, so I'm not rooting for an L for you, but at the same time, I'm like, you lose Doc Rivers 9 times out of 10 if you lose this series in 6.
Yep.
And you're okay with that. That's completely fine. That's the scariest thing about this conversation. That should not be a medium that we are coming to. Like, that should not be a place where you're, like, emotionally happy. And honestly, if it was the same way around, if Doc Rivers was the coach of the Lakers right now and losing to the Warriors, as much as it would absolutely kill me for the next 8 months, losing to the Warriors in this fashion, 3-1, Doc Rivers is my coach, whatever, I would absolutely be like, thank God. Like, it would be this, like, it would just be like this homecoming. Anyway. So that's all I have on Boston, Philly. Do you have anything else before we hit the West really quick?
No, I mean, I think we've kind of hit the teeth of it. It's a pretty, in my eyes, it's a pretty simple series. Like, James Harden needs to play great. Boston needs to hit their threes. Whichever one works more. Like,
if both happens, who wins the series? The rest of this, if both happen the next 3 games, who wins?
It's going to come down to role players.
I agree. I think that Derek White number is going to be really important for Boston. I think he's going to be the difference.
Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, Malcolm Brogdon, Grant Williams. It's going to come down to those guys. D'Anthony Melton.
If Boston can get more than 17 minutes at a Time Lord, they can stop playing Al Horford 30 minutes. They can balance those guys' minutes maybe a little bit better. That'd be something I'd look forward to. But
if I'm James Harden, every time I see Al Horford on the floor, I'm calling for a screen.
Yep, I'm attacking. Gone.
See ya. It's worked for him all series long.
Yep, and it gets them open too, because they're not going to want to switch it, and Al Horford's going to be stuck in that 15 to 17 feet area with James Harden. It just doesn't work. So I'm with you. All right, hit the West really quick. I don't want to spend forever on the Lakers. I haven't talked about them a ton, partly for personal reasons, but also for they're up 3-1 on Golden State, and I made it very clear when I was previewing round 2. I said it to whoever I was with. I don't remember now. I was like, I'm just not giving you a prediction. I will not do it. And I stuck to that. So they're up 3-1, and I'm happy to say I will not be making a prediction of anything for them moving forward. But it's okay because they are putting the defending champs up against their backs in San Francisco tomorrow. So, like, they're doing what they need to do.
Do you want one from me?
I want something. How does this, like, as an unbiased opinion here, how does this Lakers team, how does it feel? Because honestly, like, the deadline stuff and, you know, to put this team together, like, Rob Pelinka obviously was you know, put upside down as a martyr multiple times for 2 years here, and to, like, pull this off essentially. And honestly, whether they win or lose this series or whether they win or lose the next series, this is a success, right? To get this roster, a lot of these guys are on multi-year deals. So just what do you think? I don't know. I'm kind of like in this open conversation with it.
I'll be honest. I'm shocked at how well the pieces that they got actually fit. Like, D'Angelo Russell has been phenomenal in the series.
And he wasn't even last night. That's the thing. He had 4 points last night, but he was so good otherwise.
He's stepped up when they needed him to step up. Vanderbilt is literally guarding Steph Curry almost every time down the court. Hachimura has had his share of, like, okay, we're just like, he's had so many opportunities where teams are just like, yeah, we're just not going to cover Rui and see what happens. And Rui erupts for a 15 or 20-point game. Like, Malik Beasley is the only one who I'd say kind of hasn't really hit a stride. But the others, like, 3 for 4 is really good considering you also have Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Like, I mean, we looked at this team going into the trade deadline, and this was kind of why I thought the Lakers were going to end up being okay. Is I figured once they got rid of Russ, right, and kind of added some type of bench depth with a few pieces, you have enough talent on this roster between your 2 best players that you should be able to do something in the playoffs. I'm just surprised at how effective I don't think it's been a while since LeBron has had, like, a legitimate crew of role players like this.
I would say the last time might have been 2020. Do we remember what happened that year?
I'm honestly terrified of seeing another Jimmy versus the Lakers.
They have one of these. Doesn't look like this one. I'm holding up my wedding ring for those watching on YouTube. I always find a way to do a YouTube plug. There's a lot more diamonds and gold and purple in that, but they have one of these things. I don't care if it was Mickey Mouse or not. Guess what? That exact same cluster of roster with that style with role players and a rotation of big men, which this one has a little less rotation of big men. Bamba looked like he was a high school recruit hanging out on the bench. Like, he looked like he was – go look at the photo. It was somebody on Twitter posted it. It was hilarious. He looked like a high school recruit hanging out for a visit. But, I think this Lakers team is built properly for the current playoffs that we're seeing, especially with some of the figuring out Darvin Ham. Like, I don't want to use the Lonnie Walker thing as, like, this crux, but, like, the Warriors are like, hey, we're playing as many guys as we can and rotating them and changing lineups and, you know, next man up kind of thing. And Darvin Ham goes, well, I kind of have to counter that.
Have around and find out.
looks down his bench and he's like, hey, Lonnie looked really good in that 1 minute garbage time on game 2. Get in here. He goes 5 for 5 from 3 or whatever it was. I don't even have the number in front of me. It was nuts. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And, like, I was working while watching that game, so I would love to say that I was, like, actively watching every play. But, like, every time he had the ball, he scored. It doesn't make any sense. And guess what? That's the beauty of this role player thing. Landing the plane again here. Trying to make sure I leave room for the last question for Phoenix Denver. But it's they're in this position where, and we'll talk a little bit about Denver Phoenix, like I said, but they're in this position where they can use a combination of anybody to win. Because if they can do this to Golden State, whether people think this Golden State team is the same or not, I don't care. They're the defending champions. Doesn't matter how Jordan Poole's playing, right? This is as a roster, as a construction, they're using different lineups and different combinations to beat Golden State. That is impressive. I don't care how anyone says it. 3-1 on the defending champions who have a relatively consistent roster compared to last year, and added even some guys like Dante DiVincenzo that I really like that have been better than Jordan Poole this series. So it doesn't matter. I don't care who the people are. It's the fact that we know what we're getting out of Steph, Clay, Dre. Like, that is what's going to happen. Andrew Wiggins obviously missed a lot of the year, yada, yada, yada. The Lakers are able to adapt to that with, I would say, a less talented team, at least on paper. So
definitely.
All right. I want to leave this. I wanted to save this for the end because I do think it's at least worth asking. And we don't have to finish this conversation today, but we should at least start this. This is the first time I'm saying this publicly. Before I do that, I do want to ask one thing that I forgot to ask a second ago. And I think I feel this way about it. I just want to see if you agree. If you're Denver, you'd rather play the Lakers. And if you're Phoenix, you'd rather play the Warriors? Or do I have that backwards? So to not be confusing for you and the listeners, because that actually came out really confusing. If I'm Denver, who would you rather play if you're Denver? The Lakers or the Warriors? Assuming they can win the series, obviously.
Can I be honest with you? I think Phoenix is going to win the series.
You think? Okay, so yeah, Phoenix is probably going to, they have a chance to come back. It's 2-2, right? They were down 2-0. But if you're Denver, I'm just giving you like whichever, because either team is 50-50 right now. Either team can win the series. So if Denver,
I think if you're Denver, you want Golden State.
I agree. That's if I said that right earlier. If not, whatever. I
think you switched it, but
either way, this is why I'm asking out loud. Denver would rather play Golden State because 100%. Of they don't have any answer for Jokic. Period. They would just would have nothing to do with him. Okay. Yeah. And if the other way around, if you're Phoenix, you would rather play. I think you would rather play Los Angeles. Would either team rather play LA? That's what I'm asking. I'm trying to ask that without asking that.
I honestly don't think so. I think Phoenix would rather play Golden State.
I like the underdog card then. Here we go. We're up 3-1 and we're still going to be the team no one wants to play. Great. Awesome.
I honestly do, because I think, again, I know Ayton is look, Ayton's no Jokic. Ask me no. But I still think, just from a size perspective, I don't love look, Wiggins can guard Kevin Durant, but I don't want that matchup.
No, I'm with you there. I think the Anthony Davis-Jokic matchup is going to be way more impactful than I think people realize, because the Warriors did a really good job this series of pulling Anthony Davis out to the perimeter. We saw it last night, and he face-guarded Steph twice like Kevin Love did in the 2016 finals, and he contested both shots. Steph made neither of them. So Anthony Davis can do that stuff, but you want him inside 10 feet. No questions about it, no ifs, ands, or buts. The Nuggets aren't going to necessarily put him through that. That type of defensive matchup. They'll keep him on Jokic probably most of the time, and then just let the Lakers guards kind of have to guard up to Jamal Murray. But I think ultimately, if Denver, only because of what the Lakers can do defensively, I think is why Denver would probably be worried. Would be where I kind of came to the conclusion. That wasn't the actual question that I thought we would spend more time on. The question I would like to ask, first time I'm doing this publicly, because I've started to have this thought in the last month or so, and then Devin Booker's playoff run. I mean, you've been friends with me now a couple of years. You know that I am a Devin Booker truther through and through. I stuck it out, even though obviously he's in my division. Yada, yada, yada. Divisions don't matter. I like Devin Booker. I'm always going to support the guy when they're not playing each other. Lakers, obviously. This playoff series, he's been the second best player in this playoff series, and I don't think that's close. So just understanding that out loud, right? 35 a game. Obviously stepping up and playmaking when Chris Paul's not there, which makes the 2-2 thing even more impressive. It creates better opportunity for Kevin Durant. All that to be said, should we be talking about Devin Booker as a better player than Jayson Tatum right now?
Absolutely.
I knew I picked you as the right guest.
I'm
just kidding. I'm not kidding from that regard, obviously. Thank you for being here. But I'm glad that you realize where I'm coming from. Because there are so many people that are going to hear this that are either A, going to unsubscribe. Fair. B, are gonna comment, and I know they haven't watched the playoffs as much as they should have, or B, they're just straight up a hater.
You can have this. You could have made this argument last year, and I would have said the same thing, because Tatum, regular season player. I will say it until he proves me wrong. To all you fans of the 2 Pointers podcast, you can support Jayson Tatum or the Celtics, whatever. Get this through your heads. Jayson Tatum is a regular season player.
So hold on. Here's where I was going to come out with it, though, because they both had a finals run where they were the best player. Right? I don't care what Chris Paul. He was the best player in that Phoenix run, regardless of the injuries, right? Boston obviously had a little bit of a tougher path. I'll get that aside. I get that. Boston had a tougher path. They had a better team. So if you just look at it from what they've done, I know Tatum's been in those moments more because of, again, the Kyrie Irving stuff in 2017. They obviously had the spot against Brooklyn a couple times. They come up short again. I think it was in the conference finals against whoever it was a few years ago. But Tatum's been there more. But in terms of if we're talking like what the playoffs have looked like to get me to the final destination, which is the finals or winning the finals, Devin Booker had an unbelievable run 2 years ago where they played Milwaukee. They were up 2-0 against Milwaukee. Boston was up 2-1 on Golden State. They've had very comparable playoff runs. And then if you look at stats to back that up, they've both statistically been very, very similar.
I would just like to point one thing out. One shown in the finals and one completely wilted in the finals.
I wasn't even going to do that only because I know for a fact that Tatum was tired. Like, I get it. We saw it. It was very obvious. But at the same time,
that's not an excuse,
there.
dude.
I know. It's not. I don't want to make
excuse.
I just want it to be a level playing field from that regard just because of I know that that's the first thing people are going to dig up. So I want to at least know that that's out there because people are going to do that.
Can I fire a question back at you?
Yes. We've still got time.
How often do you see Devin Booker get the nod in playoff crunch time versus how often do you see Jayson Tatum get the nod in playoff crunch time?
If I understand how you're asking it, Tatum gets it no matter what when Booker obviously has other teammates that he can give the opportunity to.
I've seen them shy away from him a little bit in crunch time.
Tatum?
With the exception of Game 3 in this series, I have not seen him. He's had a couple of very, very, very quiet fourth quarters.
It's such a tough thing to like just lay out there from a standpoint of, hey, A to A to B to B, this is what it's looked like for these two guys in their career. Again, this was not the show I wanted to lay out this 35-minute case because I didn't lay out I didn't prepare a ton of really detailed things that I could nitpick and do the first thing where they give you one stat that's really irrelevant but it actually gives their argument. Like I could do that, but I'm not going to because if you've watched this playoff series enough and you've watched these guys' careers enough, not you, people in general, Booker's averaging 37. They're 36.8. Let's just call it what it is, right? If it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
It's a duck, yeah.
Or it quacks like a duck. I say talks like a duck way too much. It's a duck. 37 a game with Kevin Durant as his primary teammate. Chris Paul is not in this series. DeAndre Ayton has been a shell of himself. Landry Shamet just hit the most threes he's hit since Christmas Day in a game. I just want that to be completely out there. Okay, that is the reason they won Game 4. Their bench depth. They got a random live by the three, die by the three game from Landry Shamet. Congratulations to them. Denver should have won that game. But to get like 2 steals a game from Devin Booker, which by the way, like the number sounds like a lot in the playoffs. You're going to get a lot of steals from guys just turning the ball over more in the playoffs. It happens. But there are multiple things in plays where he is going to get a guy, whether it's a 2 or whether it's a 3 for Denver. Like in a lot of cases, it's Jamal Murray, or if it's a KCP or whatever, right? So maybe not your greatest comparison there for 2 different guys. But he'll get a brunt of a guy driving and be able to push them off their spot and force it to the corner where if Michael Porter Jr. is not the guy in the corner there right now, Denver's not having anybody that's making it, right? So no offense to Jeff Green. But Devin Booker is pushing guys in a position where he's able to get the 2 steals, right? A block a game, 7.5 assists, stepped up again in that playmaking mark with Chris Paul. 3 turnovers a game. I know it's not the perfect ratio, but I mean, just uber efficient, right? 65% from 2s, 51% from 3, 61% from the field, 87% from the free throw line. So he's getting to spots in the mid-range that is forcing teams to have to play him so much differently that it's like, okay, here's Devin Booker in either a DHO with Kevin Durant or in some kind of isolation. He's getting to the mid-range, and then, oh no, where's the switch that we just had for Kevin Durant? He's wide open for a 28-footer. Oh no, it's not like a top 25 guy of all time just got the ball from that action and he's shooting a 30-footer. Like, they're having to play Devin Booker like he's Chris Paul while still giving you 37 points per game. It doesn't make any sense of why Phoenix has been successful with or without Chris Paul. And honestly, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the Devin Booker slander, and this is more about protecting him in these conversations than anything, or just making sure that it's known. But at the end of the day, it comes off extreme as the versus Jayson Tatum thing only because of just the playoff performance thing and some of the stuff this year. But, like, it's a conversation that needs to be had, and the guard depth in the West has been so good and so brutal in Devin Booker's career. We're going to look back and, like, go, wow. Actually, I'll play a game really fast to close up. How many All-Star games do you think or do you know that Devin Booker's made in his how many year career now? Let's see. 7-year career?
No, more than
Make sure I got the years right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year career.
I was going to say 2015.
How many All-Star games do you think he's made?
Well, you can block out the first 3 seasons because that Phoenix team sucked.
They were so bad.
And I think that's another thing to, focus on too, is the fact that Tatum's pretty much gone into a team that was great, and Booker's had to literally will them up from nothing.
Yep.
But I'm guessing 2.
He's made 3.
He's made 3. Okay.
Now the follow-up question would be, do you know how many All-NBA teams he's made?
Has he made an All-NBA team?
He's made 1.
He has? Okay.
21-22, right? And if we look at the flip side of a guy that we view in the same vein who's statistically been a similar product, right, from 2018's class, Devin Booker was, 2016's class? Did I get that number right? I already left the screen. I get his class mixed up with somebody else's. But in basically just in less than 100 games difference in their career, Jayson Tatum's a 4-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA player, Eastern Conference Finals MVP, All-Star Game MVP, and All-Rookie team. They were both All-Rookies. For a career, Booker averages more points, more assists. Shooting splits are very similar. Devin Booker's a better shooter consistently if you average in true shooting. So it's a conversation that needs to be had. If this gets aggregated, I don't care. Because guess what? It's a conversation that needs to be had. And honestly, I might turn it into a TikTok. So smile for the camera because this is going to be used in some form or fashion. It needed to be said. And honestly, I was going to talk to myself for 30 minutes, and I'm very thankful this is my landing the plane. Thanking you. Final thoughts from any of the playoff stuff? Any predictions you think? Sounds like you think Phoenix is going to win the series against Denver. Anything else before we get out of here?
Phoenix, Lakers in 6. Miami in 5. I'm not going to comment on my own team.
You think you think Golden State's going to win in San Francisco and then the Lakers will close it out?
Yep.
Okay, and that's what happened in Memphis. I just think that the Lakers have too much momentum right now, especially playing in a 1-1 now where it's a 1 day off rest, which may hurt them because of the age, but. I do think they can go into San Francisco and get it done. LeBron referenced, that was the second thing he referenced in his post-game presser with Chris Haynes, was just they've learned from that mistake in Memphis, and Golden State's a better team, so I think they can figure it out. So,
yeah.
Again, I'm not making a prediction. I'm not doing it on my own team. I'm with you there. I'm glad you've made that clear with yours. So, good luck in Game 5 tonight. As this is recorded, it is Tuesday afternoon, right before the game tips off in a little bit here, so people will already know the result by the time they hear it. But good luck in the series. Thank you again for coming on. Pleasure having you, and I look forward to having you back again to keep talking hoops with me, whether it's on a phone call unrecorded or whether it's on here recorded. So,
hey, thanks for having me as always, Travis. Pleasure.
Thanks, buddy. If you just enjoyed today's episode with Julian, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. All his links will be in the description below. For Twitter, as always, on YouTube, it's on the screen. Feel free to drop him a follow. Talking draft stuff over the next couple of weeks as well. Him and I are always talking about the draft. That's what's coming up here soon. If you're hearing this right now, that means the Coach Scott Para, head coach of men's basketball, Rice University, is up on Everything College Basketball feed. I'm on over there with Phil and Josh Burton. Excuse me. We recorded that episode right after Julian and I spoke today. So feel free to go check that out. Awesome interview with Coach Para. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, 5-star review, rating. Everything's greatly appreciated. Don't forget that SeatGeek is the beginning sponsor. $20 off your first purchase. Link in the top of the description. Thanks for letting me #ad on the way out of here. This has been the 2 Pointers Podcast. On behalf of Julian, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.